This creative experience is about mandalas. We are going to look at mandalas from around the world and try making your own using objects, digital websites, drawing, or folding paper. The materials you will need depend on which choice you'd like to build or draw. Our participate page is located at tinyurl.com/mandalainfo. Here you will find the links to everything you see in this video guide. Our plan is to look at a mandala presentation and then check out some additional resources that are available on the participate page. I am going to share a demonstration on how to use two websites to build mandalas. Then we'll review the choices we have on what you want to make. Hello! I am going to share with you the mandala presentation before we look at the participate page because I want you to have a sense of what a mandala is and some examples of the ones that you can build before you start looking at the other resources. I'm going to make myself smaller and share with you. Mandala is the word comes from the classical Indian language of Sanskrit. Sanskrit is a language over 5,000 years old. And loosely translated, mandala means circle, but it is more of a symbol than just a circular object. Mandalas can be symmetric or asymmetric, but they always have a radial design, which means they start from the center and they move outwards in a like a growing concentric circle pattern. So here we have a few examples of how the represented word doesn't just mean circle, it's a symbol of wholeness or complete. So you can think of radial designs that are in many aspects of life. We have the whole solar system, a planet. We have also the abstract or conceptual concepts of circle of friendship, the cycle of seasons when we go from fall to winter to spring to summer, the family or community support systems. All of those could be a symbol of the wholeness and complete. And mandalas are connected to those concepts. The origin of mandalas in ancient Indian temple architecture in 700 BCE. BCE means before Common Era. So if we take 2020 and subtract 2020 years, and then go back another 700 years, then we get to 700 BCE. So this means 2,720 years ago, approximately, we first had mandalas in the Indian temple architecture, built into both in mosaics in the floor and on the walls. Then you can also find radial designs amongst other cultures. They don't necessarily call them mandalas, but there are some similarities, and I included them because there's a chance to also think about the asymmetrical radial design. So in some Native American cultures, not all, you might see some radial designs in things like dream catchers or in some of their artwork. And the way that the painting is handled, even though this is only a half circle right here, this upper half is a radial design and it repeats. Then we have in Celtic Knots. Celtic Knots, I wrote mandala down here, but they wouldn't call this a mandala, even though some of the computer programs I'm going to show you would create mandalas like this. Celtic Knots have their own symbolism, but the connective and the meaning behind a lot of them is tied to the same way we think of the radial concepts of wholeness and community. One of the nice things about Celtic knots, if you use your finger to try to follow along, the lines are all connected and woven together, and it can be really satisfying to watch somebody either draw a Celtic knot or some that can actually be tied with rope. It's pretty mesmerizing how some people remember the patterns to do that. But the Aztec calendar is a large stone. It was made based off of the Mayan calendar. Both of them are ancient civilizations. And this stone has been carved and has both radial and radial symmetry that is also asymmetric in some places. So the face in the center of this has vertical symmetry if I cut it across here, but not horizontal symmetry. However, as you grow out, you can see some of the elements then become symmetric in a radial pattern. So if I were to slice a piece of this like a pie, you can then see a reflection of many of those forms in other slices. The Labyrinth in the Chartres Cathedral in France is an example of a maze style radial design. Labyrinths were most popular in Greek mythology as a complex designed structure meant to hold the Minotaur. It was also found in ancient Egyptian cultures, which is where the oldest labyrinth that we know of was located, in about 5th century BCE, so the 400s BCE. But the nice thing about this, so the center has the radial symmetry all the way around, and then it's almost divided into quarters. And this is much larger than it seems. To put this in perspective, these are chairs. So you could walk the labyrinth pathway, and it's meant to be confusing. It has a lot of twists and turns, but it's also only a singular pathway. And if you wanted to, you could pause the video and almost follow this with your fingers and see how it takes you across the whole labyrinth and builds its way both in and out to get to this center point. So we then have Aboriginal art. The Aboriginal artists from Australia, Aboriginal is used in Australia the same way that we use the term Native Americans. It's to represent the people or recognize the people and cultures that were here before us. For the Australians, Aboriginals are almost like their native Australians. And there's a lot of radial symmetry in the work that they do that uses dots, but also in the repeated symbols. So some of this is asymmetrical and some of it has radial symmetry. Like for instance, both of these snakes are going up. That would be a vertical symmetry, but not the same if I were to cut a diagonal. And then in many cultures, there is a pattern of radial symmetry with stained glass. This is a rose window most commonly found in churches. This rose window is very large, and stained glass is built by cutting pieces and putting them together in sections to then make a whole. So all of these not only are quite large, they were each built one at a time, and they were built to be as close to the same as possible to create a full radial symmetry. And the color comes from the glass and from the light pushing through behind it. So I now have some examples of some things that you could build like this. This is a found object mandala. It is a radial symmetry, mostly in its form, but then also in the way that it has patterns of color. So this could also be tied to a color wheel. And mandalas are very open-ended. You don't have to put a ton of thought behind them. They're meant to be somewhat meditative too, to build. And this one is full of objects, but you could also go in a direction like this. Legos. You could place things out. This one almost reminds me of a star pattern. And if you don't have those, try some other toys. Did you notice they're all made of Barbies and Barbie accessories? I think that if this is a full-size Barbie, these were taken from very high up, like a second floor. But you can arrange toys to also create concentric circles. Concentric being here is one circle, then there's the next layer of circles, the next layer of circles, and so on. What do you notice in this? It's all made of stickers, very random stickers. There's toothpaste, there's a chemistry flask, I see many sharks, goats, roses, a thimble. So you can use any material to make a radial design. I am going to be showing you how to make this one on a computer website that's in the participate page. And even though this looks complicated, a few settings on a computer will allow you to build radial designs very easily. You could also choose to draw mandalas. It can be very relaxing because it's repetitive, and most people find drawing to be pretty calming when you're not trying to produce something for someone else. So this one is obviously complex. You do not have to add this many details, but some of the resources we have show you some of the ways to draw details like this if that was a direction you were interested in. You can also choose the size. You can have very small radial designs. The last one is folded paper sculptures, and if you are interested in doing this, I put the video from the art teacher who shows you how to do the folds, the 3 separate folds. But if you don't have paper, keep in mind that any post-it notes are already sized 3 inches by 3 inches, so you can use some of these if they're available and if that's okay with your family. If you don't have square paper, one of the easiest tricks to make a perfect square, I'm going to grab an index card right here. You don't have to really worry about sizing, but this is a rectangle, not a square. If I take a corner and I fold it to the edge, yes, I'm going to have this extra I need to cut off, but if that gets cut off, when it's unfolded, it's a perfect square. And this can be used for how you want to either start folding with origami or start folding some of these radial designs. Any paper works, paper bags, gift wrapping. You don't necessarily need to worry about measuring it out. Once you have one square, you can just use that as a template to cut others. So I'm now going to share with you some of the resources on the Participate website, and then hopefully you get a chance to get started building your own. Our Participate page is located at tinyurl.com/mandalas. And the first thing you'll see is our PDF and a copy of this video. If you started with this, you might have clicked on the tinyurl/mandala info right here, and it would bring you to this page. I have already shared with you the presentation, but if you wanted to pull up the PDF on your own just to look through some of those examples, you can. And then we have some video resources to expand your understanding of how artists use and interpret mandalas. So Zach Corvin does a lot of illustration work, and this is a pretty satisfying video to watch. This is him drawing a wall mandala by hand using just paint markers. And this is what we would call a time lapse, which means that it is sped up. Obviously, he's not moving this fast, but you can see he's using rulers, he's using yardsticks, and he's doing a lot of math and measuring. That one, he's just using a wood plank. If you've ever used one of those, that is called a compass. It allows you to draw perfect circles. So I'm going to pause this. When he gets to some of the intense levels, of filling in spaces, keep in mind that this is entirely drawn by hand, and all those areas that you see that are gray is all done with dots. Let me see if I can find one of the scenes where it focuses up on him. So everything that appears gray from a distance is still using a black marker, but done with tiny dots. Then we have some other examples. If you wanted to watch it in full, you can. This is the Tibetan sand mandalas that are from the Tibetan Buddhist ritual. And while they are extremely colorful, they are also ephemeral because this is sand. So this shows you some up close techniques that they use
Tibetan medicine
just to build these out of sand.
Crucial to the Buddhist path.
So if I'm going to just skip through some of these sections because I want to get to the parts where they show you some of how it's made in case you don't watch the video on your own. And they have small straws that they then use to tap against objects and create. So you see how he's using the vibration to control how much sand is coming out. And if you take a look here, so these sands are crushed marble, but then they are also mixed with a variety of dyes to get these very bright colors. But this is entirely made out of sand. There's no glue involved. It's just placing the things delicately where they are. And because it's just sand, it's not meant to last, which is why we would call it ephemeral. It's a beautiful video. It's really mesmerizing to see as they continue to work through the process. Here is a news report from another artist, the sculptor Andy Goldsworthy, and he has built mandalas in a couple of different structures. He does a lot of large-scale sculpture work, and I am going to, yes, Weta is my local station. So I will tell you that PBS will play a ad. PBS stands for the Public Broadcasting System. Let's see if I can mute that. The local broadcasting system, but that means it's paid for by donations and the federal government. The ad is not skippable, but it does only play once. There's no ads in the video. So British sculptor Andy Goldsworthy has long been known for his unconventional approach to art, and they show you some of the samples of his work. But he is currently working on building a walking wall. This came out in August, the end of August of just last year. So about 6 months ago.
Story for Canvas, our ongoing series on art and culture.
First load of the day. As the sun came up on this early morning on the grounds of the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City, workers took apart stones from one end of a wall, piled them in small wheelbarrows and carried them a short distance where they were added to the wall's other end. It's an unusual project that began last March and will run through November in 5 stages. To build a section of wall 100 yards long with 100 tons of rock, then...
So they completed this project in November, and the concept is about a wall that takes a walk. And so the end of it is picked up and dismantled and then replaced by Andy Goldsworthy and other artists. And this one even walks across the road and then into the museum eventually. I'm not going to show the whole video, but if you wanted a chance to see that, it also shows some samples of his other work that does circulate around mandalas and around the practice of doing repetitive art making steps. We then have 2 computer examples of ways that you can build your own. Neither of these require login, so if you click the Silk Generative Art, and I'm going to click Draw Something, we have, if you can see them, 2 floating dots, and if I hold my mouse down, light starts to grow out and follow along where my mouse is. Now I'm going to click New and restart it, but I also want to show you this button right here that says Controls. It allows you to choose color If you want to have a multiple color, you can make your color feed into another one. I'm going to make the red go into the blue. And then you have a controls of how many rotational symmetries do you want. So right now we're on 2. I'm going to go over to 3. And then if you wanted to change colors, I'm going to increase to, let's do 4. And all I'm doing is moving my mouse around. I like that. I'm going to add some blue. Let's see, how many can I get at the most? 5 folded rotational symmetry. All right. So this is an easy way that you can try exploring some of the beauty of having radial symmetry as art. And if you really like something, I mean, this is a pretty cool image. I am going to click the button that looks like a little camera that says Save Picture, but this is important. It's not saved yet. If you click off this website, this gets destroyed. Do you see this little tiny version of it? You need to click this with the right side of your mouse. That's the other side of the button, or the other button on the mouse, and it pulls up a menu, and you need to look for the words Save Image As. It might look different on your computer if you're on a Windows, or if you're on a tablet or phone, but you can hit Save Image As, and it'll create a download. So here's now my picture in giant form that I can use and or send to somebody. So now I'm going to take myself over. I want to go to New. I want to show you one more control setting you have. You also have Spiral towards center and Mirror across center. So if I uncheck the Mirror across center, do you see how some of the dots disappeared? So here I now just have one line that is not mirroring to the center. So as you try this out, play with some of the controls. If you end up really liking something and you want to undo it because you went way too far, I liked it better 10 seconds ago. The undo button will only go back one step. Just keep that in mind. It is not a big deal to hit new and try something different. The spiral towards center, when that's off, now I just have the lines and they are not spiraling towards the center. So there's some different controls that you can start to play with. You can turn things on and off. Now I'm back to spiraling towards the center, which means I'm getting these more flower petals. And again, if I want to save, I can click this. It does not mean it's saved yet until I right-click this image and hit Save Image As, and it will download it and put it in the Downloads folder, most likely. There's a second Mandala computer option at Mandala GABA, and for this one, there's some more controls. This number up here is the +1 access, so if I add to this number, do you see how we're getting more, I'm going to say pie slices right now? So I am going to back me down to, let's do 5. You can pick your color. You can change the color of the background by saying, I'm going to go with a purple, and then this is the bar for sliding. How dark or bright do you want it? I'm going to go for a darker purple as a background. And this paint bucket only fills the background. Then you have a paintbrush to fill. So normally paint bucket means fill, but on this app, it only means background color. This is what you'll want to fill your shapes in later. If I use just the pencil, and right now I'm going to leave this line on here, which is the mirror and translate. I need to pick another color. I'm not seeing anything right now because my background is what color? The same color as my current pencil. You have to change the color in order to be able to see it. You also have an undo button. I'm going to go get a light blue, and then I'm pulling my mouse out and over. Boom. I'm going to bring it back down and back up. So you could probably spend a couple of, honestly, if you really enjoy like satisfying things, you could probably spend a couple of hours on something like this. But this is all lines, and I want to fill in some shapes. So I'm going to bring that back down. And if I do increase the number of lines, just keep in mind that in some places, it's going to cut through previous lines that you did because you're changing some of the math that goes into it. If you make a mistake, hit the undo button. I'm going to start with this and use my paintbrush, and I'm now going to fill in some sections. Sorry, you can't fill the sections of canvas which are already drawn. What does that mean? Can't fill the sections that are already drawn. So what can you fill? Is this because I had that? Oh, goodness me. I forgot that I made all those crazy purple lines at the beginning, and apparently that was messing with me. So I'm going to go to find a new, and I'm going to click this button that says new session. Okay, now we're going to try that again. I'm going to go out, over, and back. And now let's see if I fill in. There we go. So if you see, the reason it wasn't working before was because I accidentally had a whole bunch of purple lines that I drew that I couldn't see. I'm going to go with a pattern here. Let's do, so you could build and paint, and then I'm going to add some additional layers onto this. And maybe some right here. Oop, too close. Honestly, pop some music on. This would probably be a very relaxing activity for many, many people, not just students. If you've got a stressed out older or younger sibling, maybe you need to show them this website. Ooh. It's going too far. Undo. So if you really like what you've made, perhaps you've made something far more attractive and more thoughtful than I am making right now. You can then save it by clicking this save and share, and it's going to do something called rendering. It doesn't include those lines on the background, and you're going to see, hey, it's in a box. What you need to do right here, is it this? Click over X. That's the other one. No. This is why it's important for me to try these things out so I know how to help you. All right, I am going to save and share. And then there's click, is it click this? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So I did click this button. It's hard to read because it's in blue lettering on black, but it says a PNG, and then it downloaded a copy of this picture right here that I have, and you can see in my, now I have to go pull up the downloads. Sorry. Okay. You can see in my picture right here of my beautiful mandala, and this is something that can be mailed off to a family member or emailed to a teacher and shared, or you could post it to someone. So this is another way that you can make them that's purely online. We have, some of you have seen this before, but we have a video from another art teacher about how to fold and build these paper mandalas. And then we have some resources on how to draw mandalas. And then we have a button that says number 2. So there's the second page because participates only hold open about 9 objects on a page. So if you really need a chance to get started in a simple way and you want to try drawing, you can either print this off or use a ruler, draw yourself a box, make an X, and then make a T. and you'll get these slices right here, and you can see some different ways that you can try building it. You can try building it with paper, or you can just start drawing it freehand right away. So I hope you enjoyed and have a chance to try some of these things on your own. I am going to probably spend some stress releasing time on this website. Bye.